Hi, I'm Bridget. Welcome to my kitchen. This is my cottage kitchen, a relaxing place where there's no lawn to mow and we spend afternoons on the beach. But there's still lots of cooking to be done, but it's cottage cooking, summer cooking. The barbecue is usually the star of a summer meal, but every great barbecue needs side dishes to go with it. Today we're sharing 3 healthy favorites: a creamy apple dressing for a homemade coleslaw, a roasted sweet potato salad, and an all-purpose salad dressing. This is my all-time favorite salad dressing. It's extra creamy, but is non-dairy. It's a vegan recipe, and it gets its creaminess from a whole apple. I'll show you. We're going to slice the apple. This is a smallish apple, and I chose a nice red one because we put it in skin and all. And because we're eating the skin as well, you'll want to give it a good scrub before we make the dressing with it. And I'm just going to cut it into 8s. And on top of the apple, I'm going to add about a tablespoon worth of minced onion. I'm just going to slice it extra fine. It'll get pulverized or pureed, I guess, in the blender, but to make it easier for it to be chopped up finely, I'll cut it into little pieces. All right. So then I'm adding 1.5 tablespoons of pure maple syrup. You could use honey as well. I've got a tablespoon of Dijon mustard. I'm going to add a generous pinch of salt, several grinds of pepper, and then 3 tablespoons of a good apple cider vinegar. You can use any kind of vinegar in this, or your favorite vinegar, fruit vinegar, but an unpasteurized cider vinegar is always my favorite. So I'm going to whir this in the blender until it's smooth, and then I'll add the olive oil, whir it again, and our dressing will be ready. To the whirred apple mixture, I'm going to add 6 tablespoons of a good olive oil. So 6 tablespoons is 1/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons. And we'll whir it again. And then you'll see how that rosy red apple gives the dressing a lovely blush of pink. So it is nicely blended, and we'll just put it in a jar. This will last in the fridge for a couple of weeks, but we are going to use it right off the bat. When I make this recipe, I usually triple it actually, and leave it in a big mason jar in the fridge so we can eat it on regular green salads, or we can also make this easy coleslaw that I'm going to make with you now. For a homemade coleslaw, I'll usually just thinly slice purple cabbage and green cabbage, but sometimes, for simplicity's sake, it's easier to just buy your cabbage already sliced. So that's what I've done. This is a good big bowl full, and our nice creamy apple dressing, I'm just going to pour it over and toss it. I do like to buy a mixture that has extra colors in it. Just makes this salad a little prettier. And before I take the bowl to the table, I'll just sprinkle over some chopped parsley, or you could mince some chives to sprinkle over top of the coleslaw. And this single batch is just the perfect amount for this big bowl of cabbage. You can serve this as a side salad, but it's also really good tucked into tacos with grilled fish or chicken. And I've got some fresh parsley. I'm just going to slice it and sprinkle it over top to add a little bit more color. Doesn't need to be diced too finely because parsley has a nice flavor. And our salad is ready to serve, or it can go in the fridge for up to a day. Our next summer side dish is a roasted sweet potato salad. It's tossed with a really tangy vinaigrette that has no sweetener in it. It doesn't need it because of the sweet potato. So to begin, we're going to peel 4 sweet potatoes, and I'm going to cut them into 1-inch dice. To cut into 1-inch dice, I find it easier to slice the sweet potatoes in half first. You can make this salad with regular potatoes, but you will need to roast them a little longer. Sweet potatoes roast up so quickly, especially when they're diced. You don't need the pieces to be perfect, and you don't need them to be 100% uniform, but just try to have them a similar size so they'll cook at the same rate. So now that these are chopped, we'll get them in a bowl. And then I'm going to thinly slice half of a red onion. Now for the onion. Roasted onion adds a wonderful flavor to a salad. It gets almost sweet. So I'm slicing it fairly thinly. Not paper thin, but pretty close. All right, I'll add that to the bowl. And I should have put it in a larger bowl because I'm going to toss this with about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. So instead, I'm going to toss it right on the baking sheet that I've lined with parchment paper because I don't want it to stick. The edges of the sweet potato are going to get nicely browned, and I don't want those brown bits sticking to the pan. So about 2 tablespoons. And then I'm going to sprinkle over some salt and some grinds of pepper. And then I have some fresh herbs that I've washed. This is a combination of thyme and oregano. And I'm just going to kind of pull off the little leaves, flavorful leaves, to mix in with our vegetables. This is going to smell great while it's roasting. You can toss fresh herbs into almost anything you're baking or cooking in the summer. They add a beautiful flourish of color and so much flavor. All right, so I'm going to toss that around just so everything is coated with oil. And then I'm going to roast it at 400 degrees for about 25 minutes or until the sweet potatoes are soft. but we don't want the sweet potatoes to get mushy because then they'll just collapse in our salad when we toss it with the dressing. So they just need to be, I guess, cooked enough that they'll have a nice texture when eaten cold. And into the oven they go. I'm going to toss them a couple of times while they're baking, just so they cook evenly. So maybe in about 15 minutes, we'll take them out and move them around a little bit. Our sweet potatoes have been roasting for about 15 minutes, so it's time to toss them. And we'll check how soft they're getting too. So I would say they're more than halfway done. And they smell terrific with all those herbs and the onion. And they are starting to brown a little bit. Do your best to arrange them in a single layer, and that way the sides that are touching the pan will brown nicely. All right, we'll put them back in for another 10 minutes, and we'll see if at that point they're ready to take out. While our sweet potatoes are finishing cooking, I'm going to mix up the dressing that we'll toss them with. And I'll start with 3 tablespoons of cider vinegar or your favorite fruit vinegar. And to that, I will add a teaspoon of Dijon mustard and a generous pinch of salt. It's probably 1/4 teaspoon. And then I'll add, another generous pinch of pepper. That's maybe 1/8 teaspoon. Really depends on how hot you like your dressing to be. And when we toss our salad, when we toss the sweet potato with this dressing, we'll taste it and adjust the seasoning anyway. Okay, I'm just going to give that a good stir. Sometimes when you mix Dijon mustard with vinegar or in a dressing, it stays in little tiny bits. It doesn't mix in perfectly, so we're just going to whisk it a little bit. There we go. Now I used a regular Dijon mustard, but if you have a grainy mustard, like an old-fashioned mustard, that would be perfect for this recipe. In fact, I'm wishing right now that I had grainy mustard up here. Okay, well, I poured the olive oil in. This was 1/4 cup of olive oil. I was whisking just to help the olive oil emulsify or help the dressing emulsify. And I'm going to add 1 more tablespoon of olive oil. So it's 5 tablespoons in all of olive oil to 3 tablespoons of vinegar. So it'll be nice and tart, but not too tart, and just right for those roasted sweet potatoes. All right, so we'll set that aside and wait for our sweet potatoes to finish cooking. We've given our sweet potatoes another 10 minutes to cook, so I think they're ready. Oh, and they do look beautiful and a little golden. Let's test for tenderness. I'm going to check one of the larger chunks. And they are fork tender, so they're not mushy because we don't want them to be mushy because we still have to toss them with the dressing when they've cooled. But they just give way enough with the fork. We're going to let those cool. They don't need to be cold, but they just need to be not hot, I guess, before we toss them with the dressing. Our roasted sweet potato has cooled enough, so we're going to toss it with the dressing. And then we have a couple of other things that we'll sprinkle over top before it's ready to serve. There are still some bits of herbs, or the twigs or the sticks of herbs, and I'll leave it up to you as to whether or not you want to pick those out. If they're really thick and woody, then yes, you would want to. But really, if they're just If they're very fine and edible, you could just leave them. Sometimes it's nice to have a potato salad that's different from your standard fare, from the mayo-based regular potato salad. And this sweet potato salad is exactly that. We may not need all of the dressing because you don't want the salad to be too wet, but a generous drizzle, that's for sure. There we go. And I'm going to toss it a little bit, but with a spatula, because I don't want any of the sweet potato chunks to get squashed. All right. Finally, I'm going to sprinkle over some toasted sunflower seeds. And then I have some chopped parsley. And then you can decide if it needs a little bit more salt and pepper. This salad would also be delicious with a little bit of feta sprinkled over top. And if you didn't want to use sunflower seeds, you could use toasted pine nuts or walnuts or pecans. I like this salad with toasted sunflower seeds and chopped parsley sprinkled over top, but really you could use any kind of nut or seed that you have in the house. And when it comes to herbs, chives would be lovely sprinkled over top of this salad. And now on to our final recipe of the day. It's a simple dressing for salad greens. It's easy to have a fridge cluttered with half-empty bottles of store-bought salad dressing, but I think it's even simpler to make your own. This is what I call my house dressing, and I make a big batch of it and leave it in the fridge. We're going to begin with 1/4 cup of cider vinegar, or you could use your favorite fruit vinegar. Balsamic vinegar is lovely with this dressing. And then I'm going to sprinkle in just 1/2 teaspoon of dried oregano and a tablespoon of Dijon mustard and a good pinch of salt and just a little bit of pepper, really just a pinch of pepper. And then for sweet, 2 tablespoons of molasses. Molasses adds a savory kind of sweet to this dressing. There we go. All right. I'm just going to put the lid on this mason jar and give it a good shake. This is what I call the easy way to make salad dressing. All right. So that is well combined. And to this, I'm going to add 2/3 cup of olive oil. I always like to use a really flavorful olive oil, but if you like a lighter oil, then that would work too. So it is well mixed now. I'm just going to take a little taste off the lid. And it has a wonderful, almost caramelly tart sort of flavor from the molasses. You can use this as your basic recipe and then change it up as you like, and depending on what you have in your cupboard. It's also delicious made with walnut oil. So I would use 1/3 cup walnut oil and then 1/3 cup of either olive oil or grapeseed oil. And if you'd like, you can change up the sweetener. So here we've used 2 tablespoons of molasses. You could use 1 tablespoon of molasses with 1 tablespoon of maple syrup or honey. So now you see just how simple it is to make your own salad dressing. With these 3 recipes, maybe salads will become the star of your next barbecue. I know they are with mine. Thanks for watching.